Hi there, it's Florence here and welcome back to another episode of my knitting video podcast. It has been about a month since the last episode, which is too long because I've been knitting so much in the last month and I have loads of stuff to show. I think I'm actually not going to show everything today because it's maybe too much. And I'll just focus on talking about the things that I do have in lots of depth, and I'll save some for the next episode as well. In these episodes, I just talk a little bit about any knitting projects that I finished recently. I particularly talk about the pattern that I used and the yarn that I used and what I think of it. And I also show anything that I currently have in progress. And then at the end, sometimes I show any yarn or books or anything else knitting related that I've picked up in the last month. There's not much of that today, which is good because there has been a lot recently. As usual, before I start, I will mention what I'm wearing because I always get a lot of questions about it if I don't. This one, I'm not sure I actually need to talk about because I did show it in the last episode. This is the Belle and Sebastian pullover. Anyway, it's by Sorry Nordland, and I had just finished it when I filmed the last episode, so I spoke a lot about it there. I knitted this as part of a mini knit along with some of my friends who go to the same knit night as me in Oxford. We meet on Thursday nights and Saturday mornings and we knit together, and we've been working on quite a few pieces together where we all knit the same thing, which I think is really great for motivating me to complete some interesting and sometimes more challenging projects. This is not too challenging though. This was honestly a very easy cabled jumper. It's at quite a large gauge, so it knits up very quickly. And if you want to hear more about this jumper and the yarn that I used, do check the previous episode. I'm struggling because it's very warm already. This might be the last episode where I get to wear a jumper like this before the summer. But I will jump right into it and show my first finished object for today. I have a few finished objects actually, and this one was almost done in the last episode. So I don't know how much I will have to say about it, but this is the Tombo sweater. I'll try and hold it up so that you can see it properly. It's got stripes all over. Looks like this. It's very plain. And this is what the shoulder shaping looks like. I guess I'll talk a little bit more about that in a moment. This is the Tombo sweater, as I said. A couple of years ago I knitted a piece which was called the Tombo tee. I knitted it freehand. I ended up writing a pattern for it, which I published a couple of years ago, I think. And I really like that t-shirt. I've worn it a lot. It's knitted up at a fingering weight gauge. And for a long time I've wanted to do a similar piece, but a DK weight gauge for the winter. And I finally got around to finishing it. This has also been on the needle since last summer, maybe. It's been going for a while. The reason I wanted to make this striped jumper using a similar construction to what I used for this t-shirt a couple of years ago is that I think that this sort of shoulder shaping, this is a contiguous, I think it's called shoulder construction, I think it works really well with the stripes. If you're adding the sleeves on afterwards, if you're doing a drop shoulder or a set-in sleeve, something with short rows, it's a lot more fiddly to get the stripes to match up on the body and on the sleeves. And so I think this sort of construction where the top part of the sleeve is completed as part of the yoke works really well. A raglan would be a really great construction for something striped like this for the same reason, but if you aesthetically don't really fancy a raglan, I think this sort of construction is a really great alternative because it kind of gives that set-in sleeve look, but it's all worked top down in one piece. Back when I was working on the t-shirt, I had to put so much thought into getting this construction to work properly, and so I was glad this time I could basically just do the same thing without thinking too much about it. I did mention in the last episode that I'm hoping to write up a pattern for this. I will, but I might take the time to knit up a second sample before I get around to doing that. Overall, I'm pretty happy with it. I think the fit is quite good. This yarn blocked out a little bit more than I was expecting, so I might want to make some adjustments. And also, I do kind of want to find another yarn that would work well. I will talk a little bit about the yarn that I used for this. This is knitted in Tukuwool DK from the brand Tukuwool. It's a Finnish yarn brand and I bought the yarn when I was visiting Helsinki last summer. I really do like this yarn. It's very woolly. Perhaps you can see it has almost like a hairy texture to it. If you're sensitive to wool, this is really not something that you'll like at all. But I quite like it because it looks very, very woolly and it does kind of feel a little scratchy when you touch it. But I actually find that when I'm wearing it, it doesn't irritate me very much at all. And so I do have quite a bit more of this in stash that I'm hoping to knit up quite soon. The problem with this yarn is really just that it's not really available in the UK. There might be one shop that sells it, but it's very often not in stock, and Tukuwool will basically ship globally except the UK. So I want to include a yarn option in the pattern, which is something that you can actually buy in the country that I am publishing the pattern from. So we will see if I end up knitting a second sample, maybe alongside the test knitters, but I think that would be nice. Also, I think a striped pattern like this leaves you with a lot of opportunities to try interesting combinations of colours, and I've gone for the most basic grey and white even width stripe imaginable, and so I would like to do something more fun perhaps as well. And as usual, all of the colours for the yarn that I've used will be in the description. Often the yarn has colour names that aren't in English, or they just have colour numbers, other stuff that's hard for me to remember. But everything will be in the description, so if you're curious, do check that out, along with any pattern names, everything. I don't think I have very much more to say about this, just because I've spoken about it a lot in various episodes over the past year or so. But yes, on the note of it being kind of a boring colour palette, when I finished this, it was right before the East Anglia Yarn Festival. I decided I wanted to go to the East Anglia Yarn Festival. I am from East Anglia. I'm from Suffolk, and I've lived in Suffolk and in Cambridge for the huge majority of my life. And so I decided to go back and visit my parents, and I went with my mum to the East Anglia Yarn Festival, which was quite lovely. And obviously when you go to a knitting festival, you want to wear your best knitting. And I just finished this and I was really excited to wear it, but I felt it was a little bit bland, maybe, and a little bit boring to wear to a yarn festival. And so I decided to whip up a little something to spice up my outfit a tiny bit. And that was my very smooth segue into finished object number 2. This was not started in the last episode because I did just quickly knit this up to wear to this yarn festival. I decided to make a little scarf to pair with it, and this is what it looks like. So I will talk first about the yarn. I was just knitting this last minute, so I just used yarn that I already had in stash. This is Cardiff Cashmere Classic. It's a yarn that I really love and that I've spoken about quite a lot before. It's a sport weight, I would say, or light DK weight cashmere yarn, and I like it because I think you get quite a lot of yardage for the 25-gram balls. It's a little over 100 metres, 113 metres or something, which I think is quite a bit for 25 grams of DK. But also, if you're going to spend the extra money on using cashmere, I think this really gets you cashmere softness that really makes your final piece feel special and worth a little extra money. It doesn't wear brilliantly. I find it stretches out and pulls quite a lot. I guess that's kind of expected with such a lightly spun cashmere yarn that's really soft, so I don't really hold it against it. But I think it works best for accessories. I do have a cardigan that I made about a year ago, and this yarn was left over from the cardigan, and so I just decided to use it to make a little scarf. I think that these colours look so fun together. So I will talk a little about the pattern and also maybe give you a better look at this mini scarf. Perhaps you can see it a little better. I feel like it's almost too bright for the camera to film it properly. But this is the Lolu shawl by Sorry Nordland, which is a pattern I've really wanted to make for a very long time. I think it is a particularly popular Sorry Nordland pattern. It has both cables and lace on, and they combine in a way that's really, really pretty. And then it has these garter stitch edges. The pattern is obviously only on the right side, but I don't think the wrong side looks unpleasant either. This is what the back looks like. It's just kind of like a rib, maybe. I did make some modifications to this. I think it's supposed to be done with like a fingering weight plus a mohair on a 4mm needle. I decided to knit this on a 3.5mm needle just because I think that that is the needle size that this particular yarn works out the best on. With a little scarf, it's easy to make a change like this because you don't really have to worry too much about fit. Particularly this, it's knitted from end to end, so you start off with a very small number of stitches here and work your way all the way down the scarf and then increase and then decrease as you approach the other end. And so you can kind of just keep on going until it's half the length you want the scarf to be and then decrease. So that was a very easy change to make. But also I didn't want it to get too wide. So this is supposed to be a triangular scarf where like it goes to a point in the middle, but I didn't quite want that shape. I think that if I'm going to tie it around my neck, it's better if it's a little bit thinner all the way along its length. And so what I did was I increased, and then when I reached this point, I stopped, I guess like here, and I just went straight without any increases for some length, and then I decreased again. And this is all quite easy to do. There are a bunch of charts in this pattern and you sort of go from one chart to the next, and it's quite easy to figure out where is a good place to stop and where to pick up again on the chart when you decide to start decreasing. So yeah, overall the shape of this is a little more, it's not quite rounded, but it's like a flattened rather than having a point at the bottom. And yeah, I'm really happy with that. I think it looks really nice. It does scrunch up very easily, so if you wear it, it looks nice, but where you've tied knots in it, it then looks really lumpy and nasty after you take the scarf off, so maybe you need to block it, or I just roll it up, and keeping it rolled up like that helps it gradually lose that crinkliness. But overall I think it's really lovely, and I really do recommend this pattern. It is very beautiful, and I think it's one of Sewing Nordland's most popular patterns for good reason. When I was looking this up to check the pattern details before this video, I did see that there's a jumper version of this pattern as well, where it has the cables and lace sort of coming out on a round yoke, and that looks really good. I'd be very tempted to knit something like that. I have one more finished object. This is, I think, basically finished. I haven't woven ends in yet, so maybe I'll show it again in the next episode when I've done that. But at the East Anglian Yarn Festival, I bought quite a bit of yarn, which, I don't know, there was just a lot there that was very interesting to me. I was particularly interested in locally produced yarn from smaller brands that you don't find so easily online. Like, a lot of this stuff you can order online from anywhere, but it's hard to know that these brands exist and know that you can order from them. And having all of that in one room was really nice, so you can walk from stall to stall and see a wide variety of stuff. Obviously at an event like this, there's going to be a lot of hand-dyed superwash merino. And, you know, it's great. I did buy some, and I've knitted a pair of socks that are finished with it, and that's lovely. But I did also want to look for yarn where the actual yarn base is locally produced or produced by a small brand. And I was so happy with this yarn that I found. So I got the yarn from a brand called Fibre Workshop, and it's Norfolk horn breed sheep yarn. And then I guess the woman who has the brand, she sources this wool from Norfolk horn sheep and sends it off, I guess, probably to Yorkshire to have it spun and gets it back. And then she plant dyes all of it using, I think, a mix of like plants from her own garden and also like plant dye that she's purchased. And so it's all local wool and natural plant dyes. I was a little worried about the plant dyeing because I'm not sure how well these colours will hold up. But I think it'll be fine. There were care instructions. I'm very careful with all of my knitted stuff, so I will give it my best go, and hopefully it will stay looking as pretty as it looks now, because these colours are amazing and that's what really drew me to it. So these are the colours that I got. This base colour is undyed, and then this blue I think is a Woad colour. This is a Weld Green, and then there's a madder pink here as well. And I bought this yarn, and I bought pretty small quantities of these 3 different plant dyed colours. And the way this works is she gets the yarn, she has it spun, she dyes one big batch, and then that's it for the year. So when it sells out, it's not coming back, and more will be dyed a year later. But obviously, because it's all small batch plant dyed yarn, that batch the next year may also not end up looking very similar. And so if I wanted to knit a piece, I was like, I need to knit it now so that if I run out of any of this yarn, I have time to order more before it becomes unavailable. And so I did just that. I knitted it up really quickly, and I actually designed a little piece here just specifically for the yarn that I bought. So here it is. This is a jumper that I just freehanded. It came together super quickly. I spent like a week on it. I guess I've spoken a bit about the yarn already, but I'll finish off by saying it is DK weight. It blocks really nicely. It's quite transformed by blocking. It fluffs up quite a lot and sort of fills in any gaps. And it is not too scratchy. Like, it's not as fibery as the Tukuwool. I'll see if I can do a bit of a close-up so you can see the texture a little bit better. This cream I think is particularly beautiful because it has a lot of darker fibres mixed into it, so it's almost like a pale grey, and it's not a yellowy cream at all. This colour is wonderful. I bought a big cone of the undyed. I think I spent about £80 on the cone, and then I bought 1 or 2 50-gram hanks of each of the colours. And I've made this jumper a little bit too short, so I'm hoping I have enough of the undyed left to just make the body slightly longer. Okay, so to talk about the pattern, the way I went about doing this is I knew roughly what I wanted, like I had a vision in my head for the sort of jumper I wanted to use these colours for. I was feeling a little bit encouraged by the success of my 3-colour colorwork with the Latvian mittens that I've been working on recently, and so I didn't mind trying to use 3 colours per round, and that's exactly what I did to add the contrast centres onto all of these flowers. I drew the chart up in advance, like I went on Stitch Fiddle and I just drew flowers and leaves, and I also decided where I was going to place the increases. And I feel like with a round yoke jumper, because all of the increases and everything are included in that chart that I sketched up first, the actual process of then knitting up the jumper was super easy. When I posted this on Instagram, I was so surprised at the response I got. People seem to really like this, and I do really like it too. I feel like it's so springy. And so I am going to try writing up a pattern for this. I have actually already graded it, and I've prepared a couple of different charts for the different sizes. I don't know, this is a funny thing to speak about, but I have taken a long time off pattern writing. I enjoy writing patterns, but I get very self-conscious about having my work available and particularly charging people for them, and worrying it's not up to standard for the money that I'm charging. And so I've taken a bit of time off to think about this, and I think I'm going to be coming back to it from a slightly different viewpoint. I've never had my patterns tech edited. I couldn't afford to, quite frankly. It's not that cheap. But now I have a little bit more money available. I really want to take the time to do the best job I can, but then also have everything professionally tech edited and really give lots of time for test knitting. And I also now really want to push harder to try and find sponsorship for my test knitters to get yarn. I think a lot of people think that, you know, it's the designer who offers yarn to the test knitters, and that's usually not the case. It's usually that the yarn brand is willing to sponsor yarn for test knitters, and that is unfortunately something that's offered much more commonly in some countries than others. Like, yarn brands from certain countries are a lot more generous when it comes to offering test knitters free yarn to, I guess, promote their yarn than yarn brands in other countries. And in the UK, it's not very easy to find brands that are willing to sponsor yarn for test knitters. I think for this piece, obviously, like, I'm using a very special yarn from a small brand, and so that won't be the case, but it's one of the things that I really want to try harder to do for any upcoming releases. And also, I've just been thinking a lot about the feedback I've been getting. I want to include more diagrams in my patterns. I want to just make sure that my instructions are as clear as possible. And we're just going to give it a go and see how it goes. And I think this pattern will be maybe the first in, like, season 2 of Florence releasing patterns. Anyway, that was a tangent, but I really am working hard on this. I'm going to call for test knitters very soon since the pattern is pretty much done. And I'm going to try contacting some tech editors and see if any of them are willing to work with me. So yes, that's this piece. I will put a call for testers up probably on my Instagram story very soon, in case anyone is interested in being involved with that. Okay, I guess now I will show some work in progress pieces. I'll start with this one. Since I've showed a few pieces that I haven't really referenced the pattern for, let's show some more stuff where I'm just mindlessly following patterns. So I mentioned already this jumper I knitted because I wanted to knit the same thing with some friends from the knit night that I go to. And there's one person who comes to this knit night who just keeps knitting blouse number 1 by My Favourite Things Knitwear again and again. And they look wonderful. And the rest of us are all really tempted to knit it. And so quite a few of us have started giving this pattern a go. This is, well, it's kind of a jumper, but I think it's designed to be ideally made of plant fibre or partially plant fibre and to be worn in slightly warm weather. It does have long sleeves and it's knitted on pretty big needles with thick yarn. I guess I will talk about the pattern first. The construction of this is super simple and it's really, really easy. It has a very wide straight across neckline, a boat neck, I think it's called. It does have a little bit of short row shaping, which just lowers the front of the neck a tiny bit, but it's barely visible when you're wearing it. I think it's good because it kind of gives the impression of being a straight across neckline with no shaping, but it just helps prevent it from being too up in your throat the whole time, you know? It's knitted on 5mm needles and it has kind of a similar contiguous shoulder construction to the Tombo sweater that I showed before, which, yeah, I mean, it's obviously a construction that I enjoy a lot. So I'm having a really good time knitting this. And it's one of those patterns, this is something that I think My Favourite Things Knitwear is very good at, right? It's one of those patterns that's extremely easy, there's nothing complicated in it at all, but it looks so good. Every time I see somebody wearing it, I'm like, wow, that is such a cute top. For mine, I am using 2 strands of yarn held together, which I think is what the pattern calls for. I believe the pattern calls for 2 strands of the Knitting for Olive pure silk held together. I'm not a plant fibre girly. I appreciate silk is very much not a plant fibre, but it behaves a bit like a plant fibre in many ways. And so I am holding 1 strand of the pure silk with 1 strand of the merino, and I'm really happy with how this is turning out. It still definitely has that silk sort of texture, but I'm hoping that the merino will stop it stretching out quite as much. And I've mentioned many times, I don't really mind wearing merino in warm weather, so I think it will work out fine as a warmer weather piece for me. This ball of pure silk just collapses, so from sort of this point onwards, knitting with each ball becomes a real pain. In contrast, the merino holds together really well. The colours for this, you know, I'm actually not sure what these 2 are, so it will be in the description. But this one is almost like a very pale grey, and then this one is a cream colour, but with no yellow in it, like a white or a greyish cream. And it really barely gives a mould fabric. Oh no, this is becoming such a mess. It really barely gives a mould fabric, but I think it looks really nice. I will say this colour combination, it suffers from something that a lot of my colour choices suffer from, which is that I see the yarn in the ball and I'm like, wow, that's the perfect greyish, calm, white colour. I could pair that with so many things. It's not got too much yellow in, but then what actually ends up happening is it ends up looking a little bit like a garment that was white, and then I put it through the laundry with something dark coloured. It does slightly give that sort of effect. But I think it'll be really cute with blue jeans. Particularly, I've bought a couple of pairs of printed jeans recently, and I think a piece that's so plain like this would pair really well with those. And so I think I will end up wearing it quite a lot. And then when I went knitting on Saturday morning with these people, 2 of them showed up wearing this top. One in pastel pink and one in pastel green, and they looked so cute that I actually went and bought yarn for another one before I finished the first one, which I know sounds kind of ridiculous, but I actually had some of this yarn already in stash. This is Sandnes Garn Sunday. It's one of the Petite Knit collaboration colours in 6050. I think I have 2 camisole quantities of this already. So I had 3 balls of this. It's a non-superwash fingering weight merino, very similar to the Knitting for Olive merino. And so I just grabbed some of the Knitting for Olive pure silk. So this will be a very similar yarn combination to what I've used for the white one, but in just like a pastel blue colour. This one is in the colour Ice Blue. Interestingly, this Ice Blue silk is very different in colour to the Ice Blue merino. These ones might look a little bit more mild because these colours are quite different, but I think the marling will be pretty. And for this, I kind of envision it with white trousers or with a white skirt. Kind of like an inverted colour scheme to the white one with blue jeans. Usually when I go to the Oxford yarn store, I also grab one of these stitch markers, giving very early 2010s beauty guru. They're made of glass, they're really cute. They have them in like a bowl by the counter. I think they're sort of £4.50 each, so it's like a little treat. I love them a lot, and I give them as gifts often as well. I just thought I'd show that now since it's very related to that project, but I do have a couple more work in progress pieces as well. I guess I'll go for the one that I'm not looking forward to showing because it has 3 balls of yarn attached to it. This is another one that I'm knitting, oh dear, alongside the other girls from Knit Night. So after we all knitted this Belle and Sebastian jumper together, we were talking about what to make next, and I think people were quite enthusiastic about the idea of doing some colorwork socks. I am a bit terrified of colorwork socks. I've done 1 pair, which was the Moomin House socks, which were a DK weight. I had to go up 3 needle sizes compared to what the pattern instructed. It was supposed to be done on 3mm needles. I ended up having to go up to 4.5mm needles to get them over my foot. I just found it quite stressful. I do knit a lot of colourwork, and I think I knit colourwork pretty comfortably, but colourwork socks scare me. But I guess in that sense it's quite nice to be knitting this alongside other people who can emotionally support me through the process. So the theme for our little knit along is all of us are knitting strawberry pattern socks. And there are quite a lot of patterns out there for different strawberry patterned colourwork socks. Stone Knits in particular has 2 different strawberry sock patterns. I know there's a free one by Novita as well that I think some people are doing. But I'm doing this pair. These are the Itty Bitty Berry socks by Stone Knits, and they're so cute. They have these tiny strawberries all over them. As for yarn, I got this from Loop. This is a sock yarn from Lichen and Lace. I was a little bit disappointed because I did buy this because on the website it said this is a non-superwash sock yarn. And then I ordered them and it's, well, it feels like superwash. And I understand there are other treatments that could be applied to yarn to make it washable, which aren't strictly superwash. But they also literally had labels on them that said superwash. And so that was kind of a shame. But I guess I'm not the biggest superwash hater for socks. It's fine. But yeah, these are Lichen and Lace sock minis, and I chose them because you can buy these in 20-gram balls, which I figured would be perfect for this project because I don't really knit pink or green socks very often, and so I didn't have any scrap yarn lying around that would be suitable. And I think these colours look so lovely together. It has this, is it pronounced picot? I never know whether it's picot or picot. I'm going to assume picot. Has this picot edge around the top with like a contrast colour. Which I think looks really cute, and then a folded top edge. It does say to knit the folded top edge but leave it unattached and then sew that top edge down on the inside when the sock is finished. I did just knit it together with the live stitches, so I folded it as I went. I'm sure there is a good reason for telling you to do it at the end, which I'm probably going to find out soon. I'm no colorwork sock expert, so I probably should just follow the pattern really closely. If it goes wrong, I will only have myself to blame. I've stopped here because I'm a little bit concerned about the heel. It has some sort of a short row heel, but I know myself and I know my socks. I may not have done a lot of colorwork socks, but I've done probably 20 or 30 pairs of knitted socks overall. And I know that the short row heels never fit me well. I think I just maybe have like a big heel, like a large instep measurement. We can call it whatever, but when I do the short row heels, I find that it really stretches the fabric out over the top of my foot and it doesn't look very good. And I guess it's also slightly less comfortable. And so I would do like a heel flap and gusset, which is my usual technique. But of course then those gusset decreases don't work super well with the strawberry pattern. And so I have a few ideas for different heel constructions that might work well here. I could do an afterthought heel. There are some other types of heel constructions where you move the decreases from the gusset to the bottom of the foot, which might work. Various things, but I'm undecided and it will require some brain power. And I have to be in the right headspace to do the sort of knitting that requires a lot of thinking like that. So they're just sitting there for now. They're going to be very cute though. And I think once the other people in the group have all cast theirs on as well, I'll feel more encouraged to get going. Maybe this isn't going to be such a long episode after all. I feel like I'm speeding through it. I have one more thing that I want to show, and this is another work in progress. I'm very warm and I'm also very hungry, so I can't lie, I'm quite excited to stop filming this. But one more piece, I'll talk about one more piece because I am very excited about this one. Last episode I showed a bunch of the yarn that I brought back from Finland. I was in Finland at the start of last month and I picked up quite a lot of Finnish yarn. I generally find myself enjoying Finnish yarn quite a bit, and this brand in particular, so this is the yarn that's called, I'm sorry, I do generally make a very sincere effort to pronounce words in foreign languages correctly if I can, bearing in mind I'm British and monolingual. But I know that the Finnish R sound just cannot physically be made by my mouth. So I'm just going to call this yarn Tarmo, but it is spelled T-A-R-M-O. It's by the brand Vuonue. They make very beautiful yarn. They do a real range of stuff, just 100% wool, but also a lot of sock yarn. And this in particular is a DK weight sock yarn, so it does have polyamide in it, as well as non-superwash Finnish wool. I bought some of this that I'm using for socks, but I also bought a full sweater quantity of this amazing red colour. With the Cardiff Cashmere, I feel like the camera was making the red colour look much more intense. But with this one, it really is just a very, very intense red colour. And I'm just freehanding a cardigan. I have a vision for what I'm going to do here. You can see I've just joined it below the arms and I've done, what, like 10 or 15 centimetres below the armhole. It's going to be a slight drop shoulder construction. I will probably do some short rows to shape the tops of the sleeves. And what I want to do with this is I want to not have any sharp corners on this piece. That's a very weird description, but what I want to do is like have the collar of the cardigan curve into the button band and then curve onto the bottom ribbed edge of the cardigan. So you don't have like a sharp corner here or a sharp corner at the bottom of the front. I don't quite know how I'm going to do this. It will probably involve some tactical decreases. I'm going to knit a swatch and fiddle around with that and try and get it to work before I get to that point on this garment. And if it doesn't work out, then I will just make it a very plain and uninteresting cardigan with sharp corners. But I'm excited to try and see if I can make it a little bit more interesting. I think this will look great with black buttons. And I also think that this cardigan is going to be borderline indestructible. This is a rustic, scratchy wool. Again, I don't think it will bother me when it's on, but it's certainly not soft. And also it has polyamide in it, so yes, this is going to be a great everyday cardigan, I think. And it's a colour that I think I'll reach for a lot when I'm wearing a very plain coloured outfit that just needs a little bit of something added to it. I'm currently making my summer holiday plans, and I always end up planning my outfits for my summer holidays months in advance because it always seems to involve me knitting things to wear on these trips. And this is one that I particularly envision myself wearing on a lot of the trips that I'm going on this summer. And so I'm really pushing to get it done soon so that I can enjoy wearing it then. You may also have noticed all of my yarn is hand wound into balls. I actually, I think I've mentioned a few times, my yarn winder broke, and for ages I did not have a yarn winder. And then I eventually got around to buying one, and then that one broke immediately on the first use. And then I went back and I bought another yarn winder, and what I've now realised is there's not a single table in my flat that is the right thickness to clamp a swift or a winder onto it. So I'm still hand winding all of my yarn, and I'm using a lot of yarn that needs winding at the moment. I'm even weighing up like booking a meeting room at work at like 7 AM and taking all of my yarn into work to wind there, potentially. Anyway, I think that's it from me today. Thank you very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. I will be back again soon with another one since I'm knitting absolutely furiously at the moment. And I really look forward to having a lot of these pieces done so that I can wear them. They're just things that I'm really excited about. I'm really enjoying knitting at the moment. I'll see you soon.